Once upon a time, nestled at the foot of a towering mountain, there lived two families. One was poor, struggling to survive on the meager earnings of a woodcutter. The other was wealthy, living in comfort and luxury. Though they lived close to one another, their lives couldn't have been more different. High above the village, atop the mountain, was a sprawling forest. Every morning, the poor man would climb to this forest, his axe slung over his shoulder. His life revolved around cutting wood and selling it in the village for just enough to feed and clothe his family. Despite his hardships, he was a kind-hearted man who always wore a smile. In the heart of the forest stood a peculiar stone statue shaped like a lion. Its mouth was open wide as if frozen mid-roar. Though most would have ignored the strange figure, the poor man found himself drawn to it. Each day, before starting his work, he would place a small offering of barley meal and butter into the lion's mouth. "Eat this, brother lion," he would say softly. "I know you have no one to care for you." Days turned into weeks, and the poor man's ritual became a habit. He found comfort in speaking to the silent stone lion, though he never expected anything in return. But one fateful day, as he placed the food in the lion's mouth, a deep, rumbling voice emerged. "Thank you, my friend," said the lion. The poor man froze, his heart pounding. For a moment, he thought he had imagined it, but the lion spoke again. "You are a kind and honest man. Despite having little, you chose to share. Tomorrow morning before sunrise, return to me. I will reward your goodness." The man could hardly believe his ears, but he nodded and replied humbly, "Thank you, brother lion. I will come." That evening, he told his wife about the strange event. She was skeptical, but encouraged him to follow the lion's instructions. The next morning, before the first light touched the sky, the poor man climbed the mountain and approached the lion. Its voice echoed through the forest. "Inside my stomach is a great treasure," the lion said. "You may take as much gold as you need, but heed this warning. When the sun rises, you must withdraw your hand, for my mouth will close." The man nodded, his heart racing with anticipation. Carefully, he reached into the lion's stone belly. His fingers touched something cold and heavy, gold coins. He filled a small bag, taking just enough to provide for his family's needs. "This is more than enough," he said, withdrawing his hand before the first rays of sunlight broke through the trees. "Thank you, brother lion." From that day on, the poor man's life changed. He repaired his modest home, bought better clothes for his children, and ensured they never went hungry. But he remained humble, never forgetting his struggles. His wealthy neighbor, however, couldn't ignore the transformation. Jealousy burned in his heart, and one day he confronted the poor man. "How did you suddenly become so prosperous?" the rich man demanded. The poor man, ever honest, told him about the rock lion and its treasure. The rich man's eyes gleamed with greed. That night, he devised a plan. The next day, dressed in ragged clothes to appear humble, the rich man climbed the mountain. He found the lion and began imitating the poor man, feeding it barley meal and butter. "Please eat this, brother lion," he said, feigning kindness. For days, he continued this charade. Finally, the lion spoke to him as it had to the poor man. "You may return tomorrow before sunrise and take what you need," the lion said. The rich man could hardly contain his excitement. He returned the next morning, this time with a massive sack. When the lion allowed him to reach into its belly, he began scooping out handfuls of gold, but his greed consumed him. "This isn't enough," he muttered, filling his sack until it was bursting at the seams. The sky began to brighten, and the lion's warning echoed in his ears. "Hurry, the sun is rising," the lion growled. "Remove your hand or my mouth will close." But the rich man ignored the warning. His greed demanded more, even as the golden sunlight spread across the forest. Suddenly, with a thunderous snap, the lion's mouth clamped shut, trapping his arm inside. The rich man screamed in pain and fear, but the lion remained silent. Days passed, and the villagers noticed the rich man's absence. When they finally climbed the mountain to search for him, all they found was the stone lion, its mouth tightly shut, and the rich man nowhere to be seen. The tale of the lion and the greedy man spread throughout the village. The poor man, now content with his modest wealth, often shared the story with others. "This is the truth of life," he would say. "No matter how much you have, greed will always make you feel it isn't enough. But if you are kind and content, you will always find abundance." And so the poor man continued to live with gratitude. If this story inspired you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel Soul Scripted and click the bell icon for more uplifting tales.